Welcome! So this is Minidisc Monday number 11, and throughout this series so far I've covered albums on Minidisc, and I think by and large I've either really liked them or I've loved them. However, inevitably in this series I've got to start covering albums that I have on MD that I'm perhaps not so keen on. Now then, why have I got albums that I don't particularly like? Well, I bought stuff on Minidisc back in the day, more impulsively than anything, and though I'm pleased to say that the vast majority of Minidiscs that I did buy on impulse, having either not heard any of the album before, or I wasn't familiar with the artist, or I knew the artist and didn't really like them, in the case of this one today, but the vast majority of those I did end up enjoying, at least for the most part. But there's always going to be one or two where I buy the album because it's on Minidisc and it was cheap, as in the case of this one here, and it just doesn't do anything for me. Of course, you've seen from the title and the thumbnail that today's album we're looking at is this one from Mr. Ricky Martin, and it is Medio, Vivir, and I think that means half living in Spanish. So this was Ricky Martin's third solo album, his third Spanish language one I believe, and his third overall. Did well in the US, at least in the Latin Billboard charts they have there, and I believe it was a top 10 album in Spain and France as well. Didn't do anything here in the UK. This is a European issue Minidisc, by the way. Ricky Martin was a member of the Triggers Broom of American pop music, the Latin pop boy band Menudo. It kind of established himself, at least in the Latin American market and in certain European territories as well, as a solo star by this point. So this is the oldest Ricky Martin album I've got on Minidisc. I knew that I'd have to get round to reviewing this at some point because, and here's the bad news, I've got 3 other Ricky Martin albums to look at throughout this series. The good news is, is that I think this one, from the best of my knowledge, and I'll only know for sure when I've listened to the others again, this one is by far the worst, I believe. So a quick look at the Minidisc. As usual, open it out, and we have what is most of the album artwork on the front there, and the track listing on the back. The record label for this is Columbia, which was part of Sony Music, of course, and this is probably the most low effort insert booklet ever. That's all you get. Track listings, Minidisc copyright notice there, and that's it. You'd have thought the CD and even the cassette might have more to it than that, but oh well. I'll listen to this again just now so that I could really kind of drill down into it and tell you why it's mostly crap, to be fair. I do apologise, especially to any Spanish speakers who may be watching. I know I've got loads of fans in the Latino nations, obviously, but you're going to hear some terrible Spanish pronunciation here. I do apologise for that in advance. But track 1 is Fuego de Noche Nieve de Dia ballad, and it's like a really dated sounding ballad. That's the problem with this album, and track number 1 is just its arch example to begin with, really. Too many ballads and slower paced songs on here. It's all very overproduced, sickly sweet, syrupy strings on them. You know, Ricky Martin, of course, he hit big, particularly with English speaking audiences a few years later with Living La Vida Loca, etc. And you know, there's kind of him delving in towards that sort of more up-tempo Latin pop on here, but really there's not enough of that, and there's too much of the syrupy ballads really, and that one is a prime example. Track 2 is the title track for the album, a Medio, Vivir. Track 3 is what would be arguably his breakthrough single in America, if not elsewhere in the world, Maria. I'll get back to that because it comes along again as like a bonus track at the end of the album. But that version, the original Spanish language version, is okay. It's the best thing on the album so far. I think we get another ballad here, and I'm going to butcher this. Te extraño, te olvido, te amo. I think Te Amo means I love you. No, didn't like it at all. Track 5, Donde Estares. That was alright, I think. That was quite sort of up-tempo and jolly in its own way. Number 6, Volverás. Number 7, Revolution. That was alright. Track 8, Somos la Semilla. Track 9, Como Dicerte Adios. Another ballad, I believe. Track 10 wasn't too bad. Bombon de Azúcar. Track 11 I think was probably my favourite on the album. Almost Eurodance type thing. Still kind of, for me being a big Eurodance fan, I'd rank it sort of at the bottom of the Eurodance pile. But for a Ricky Martin album of this period, and this album I think originally came out in 1995, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier. But Corazon, track 11, is I think for me the best track on the album. The penultimate track is Nada es Imposible, and what is classed as track 13, but maybe a bonus track that they added to certain versions of this, I'm not sure, is the Spanglish radio edit of the aforementioned Maria. And that is something that a lot of people have heard. It was one of Ricky Martin's breakthrough hits for, you know, English audiences, along with Living the Vida Loca a couple of years or so later. And I believe this Spanglish remix, because it is certainly remixed from the original version, that is track 3 on this album here. I think it was also included on Ricky Martin's first mainly English language album, a self-titled album, which would have come out, what would that have been, 98 or perhaps just into 99, the one with Living the Vida Loca and other things that you'll know on it. And yes, I do own that on MD, and it will be reviewed eventually. Martin, a Medio Vivir, I can't recommend it. I don't like it. There's too much sort of earnest, horrible ballads on it, really, that just don't do anything for me. Certain ballads I really like, but just the way this is produced, it's obviously catering to a kind of female market at the time. It being all Spanish language doesn't bother me at all. I listen to a lot of foreign language music, mostly German stuff, obviously. So I can't rate it down because of that, even though obviously his English language stuff, for me as an English man, an English speaker, would be more familiar. But this is not something that I particularly ever want to listen to again. If just now was the last time I've ever heard this album, then that's fine by me. But Ricky Martin with his 3rd solo album there, for Minidisc Monday today. And that's it. Thank you all for watching this edition of Minidisc Monday. I want to give special thanks to my wonderful subscribers and generous patrons. I'm going to go now, and please will you join me again in 2 weeks time, why don't you, for the next instalment of Minidisc Monday. Cheers everyone. See ya!